What if I told you that everything you've been taught about success, confidence, and achievement is wrong? That the reason you're not living the life you want isn't because you lack talent, opportunity, or resources, but because your brain is literally programmed to keep you stuck. Right now, as you're listening to this, your subconscious mind is running invisible programs that dictate every decision you make. These programs control whether you take action or hesitate, whether you feel confident or insecure, whether you push forward or give up when things get hard. Most people never realize these programs exist. They go through life wondering why they can't break through, why they keep repeating the same patterns, why success feels so elusive. But here's what the top 1% know that everyone else doesn't. Your brain is not your master. It's your tool, and just like any tool, once you learn how to use it properly, everything changes. The difference between someone who stays stuck and someone who becomes unstoppable isn't luck, talent, or circumstances. It's whether they take control of their mental programming or let their mental programming control them. By the time you finish this, you will understand exactly how to reprogram your subconscious mind for unstoppable confidence, laser focus, and relentless execution. You'll learn the specific techniques that elite performers use to rewire their brains for success. You'll discover how to eliminate limiting beliefs, destroy self-doubt, and install new mental patterns that automatically drive you toward your goals. This isn't theory. This isn't motivation. This is a step-by-step system based on neuroscience and proven by results. But here's the catch. Knowing this information isn't enough. You have to apply it because your brain is changing right now in this moment based on what you're thinking and doing. The only question is, are you programming it for success or for failure? Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Hidden Operating System Controlling Your Life. Most people think they're in control of their thoughts, emotions, and actions. They believe they make conscious decisions about how to respond to situations, what goals to pursue, and how to feel about themselves. But here's the truth that will shatter that illusion. You are not driving the car of your life. Your subconscious mind is right now. Beneath your conscious awareness, there's an invisible operating system running your entire existence. This system processes over 11 million bits of information per second, while your conscious mind can only handle about 40. It controls your breathing, your heartbeat, your reflexes, and most importantly, your automatic responses to everything that happens in your life. Think about the last time you tried to change something about yourself. Maybe you decided to wake up earlier, eat healthier, or be more confident in social situations. You started strong, maybe lasted a few days or weeks, then found yourself slipping back into old patterns. You probably blamed it on lack of willpower or motivation. But the real culprit was your subconscious programming fighting against the change. Your subconscious mind is like a computer that's been programmed with specific software. That software was installed during your childhood, adolescence, and early adult years through your experiences, environment, and the people around you. Every rejection you faced, every criticism you received, every time someone told you that you couldn't do something, your subconscious recorded it and built behavioral patterns around it. These patterns become your default responses. When you face a challenge, your subconscious doesn't ask what you want to do. It automatically runs the program that was installed years ago. If that program says you're not good enough, you'll find yourself hesitating. If it says success is for other people, you'll sabotage opportunities. If it says you always mess things up, you'll unconsciously create situations that prove it right. The most dangerous part of this process is that it happens completely outside your conscious awareness. You think you're making rational decisions, but you're actually following invisible scripts that were written when you were too young to question them. This is why willpower alone never works for lasting change. You're trying to override years of subconscious programming with conscious effort, which is like trying to steer a cruise ship with a paddle. But here's what changes everything. These programs are not permanent. They were installed, which means they can be uninstalled and replaced. The same neuroplasticity that created your current mental patterns can create new ones. The same brain that learned to doubt can learn to believe. The same mind that programmed you for limitation can reprogram you for limitless potential. The elite 1% in every field understand this principle. They don't rely on motivation or positive thinking. They systematically reprogram their subconscious minds to align with their goals. They install new software that automatically drives them towards success instead of away from it. They turn their subconscious mind from their biggest obstacle into their most powerful ally. This is not about suppressing negative thoughts or forcing yourself to think positively. This is about fundamentally changing the operating system that runs your life. When you reprogram your subconscious correctly, confidence becomes automatic. Taking action becomes natural. Persistence becomes your default response to obstacles. The question isn't whether you can reprogram your brain. The question is whether you will. Because right now, every thought you think, every action you take, and every emotion you feel is either reinforcing your current programming or installing new programming. There is no neutral. You are either becoming more of who you currently are or you're becoming someone new. Most people choose to stay the same because change requires conscious effort and most human beings are addicted to comfort. But you're not most people. You're here because you refuse to accept limitation as permanent. You're here because you're ready to take control of the most powerful force in your life, your own mind. The journey to reprogram your brain starts with understanding exactly how your current programming was installed and how it continues to control your behavior every single day. Once you see the invisible chains that have been holding you back, you can begin the process of breaking them one by one until nothing stands between you and your unlimited potential. Chapter 2: The Subconscious Sabotage. Why smart people stay stuck. You know someone who has everything it takes to succeed. They're intelligent, talented, hardworking, and they have clear goals. Yet somehow, they keep falling short. They start projects, but don't finish them. They have great ideas, but never execute them. They want to level up their life, but somehow always end up back where they started. You might even be that person. This isn't a character flaw or a lack of ability. This is subconscious sabotage in action. It's one of the most frustrating and misunderstood phenomena in human psychology. And it's the reason why smart, capable people often struggle more than those who seem less gifted. Your subconscious mind has one primary job: to keep you alive and safe. It interprets safe as familiar. Anything unfamiliar, even if it's good for you, triggers alarm bells in your subconscious because unfamiliar equals potentially dangerous. This made perfect sense when humans lived in caves and unfamiliar situations could literally kill you. But in today's world, this same mechanism keeps you trapped in mediocrity. Here's how it works. Every time you try to step outside your comfort zone, your subconscious interprets it as a threat to your survival. It floods your body with stress hormones, creates anxiety, fills your mind with doubt, and generates every excuse possible to pull you back to safety. The bigger the change you're trying to make, the stronger the resistance becomes. This is why people sabotage themselves right before breakthrough moments. The successful business launch gets delayed indefinitely. The relationship that could change their life gets ruined by inexplicable behavior. The opportunity of a lifetime gets passed up for reasons that don't make logical sense. It's not bad luck or poor timing. It's the subconscious mind doing its job of keeping you safe in the familiar zone of your current identity. Your subconscious doesn't care if your current situation makes you miserable. Miserable and familiar feel safer than happy and unfamiliar. It would rather keep you in a job you hate than risk the uncertainty of starting a business. It would rather keep you single than risk the vulnerability of real love. It would rather keep you playing small than risk the exposure that comes with playing big. But the sabotage is often subtle. It doesn't usually show up as obvious fear or resistance. Instead, it manifests as procrastination, perfectionism, distraction, sudden illness, relationship drama, or financial emergencies that seem to appear whenever you're about to make progress. Your subconscious is incredibly creative at finding ways to derail your progress while making it look like external circumstances are to blame. Smart people are particularly vulnerable to this because they're good at rationalizing the sabotage. They create logical-sounding explanations for why they can't move forward right now. I need to do more research. The timing isn't quite right. I should wait until I have more money saved. I need to get this other thing handled first. These aren't real reasons. They are sophisticated forms of resistance generated by a subconscious mind that's trying to keep you safe. The most insidious part of subconscious sabotage is that it often strikes hardest when you're closest to breakthrough. Your subconscious can sense when real change is imminent, and that's when it deploys its most powerful weapons. This is why people often experience their darkest moments right before their biggest victories. It's not a coincidence. It's your subconscious making one last desperate attempt to pull you back to familiar territory. Understanding this pattern is crucial because it allows you to recognize sabotage when it's happening instead of getting swept away by it. When you know that resistance is actually a sign that you're moving in the right direction, you can push through it instead of interpreting it as evidence that you should quit. The people who become truly unstoppable are those who learn to expect subconscious resistance and prepare for it. They know that their biggest enemy isn't external circumstances or other people. It's the voice in their head that sounds like reason, but is actually fear disguised as logic. Breaking free from subconscious sabotage requires more than awareness. It requires a systematic approach to reprogramming the beliefs and patterns that create the resistance in the first place. You have to literally rewire your brain to associate growth with safety instead of growth with danger. This process isn't comfortable, but it's the only way to access your true potential. Every person who has achieved something significant had to overcome the same subconscious resistance you're facing. The difference is that they refused to let their programming define their possibilities. They decided that their desire for growth was stronger than their need for comfort. The choice is the same for you. You can continue to let your subconscious sabotage keep you safe in mediocrity. Or you can learn to reprogram it to support your expansion instead of fighting it. The techniques exist. The science is proven. The only question is whether you're willing to do the work to claim the life that's waiting for you on the other side of your current programming. Chapter 3. The Neuroscience of Limitation. How your brain creates your reality. Your brain is not designed to make you happy, successful, or fulfilled. It's designed to keep you alive. And in the pursuit of survival, it has developed mechanisms that create the very limitations that keep you stuck in patterns you consciously want to break. Every experience you've ever had has literally shaped the physical structure of your brain. When you were criticized as a child, specific neural pathways were strengthened. When you failed at something important, certain connections were reinforced. When you felt rejected or inadequate, your brain wired those experiences into your neural network as patterns to avoid in the future. These neural pathways become like highways in your brain. The more often they're used, the stronger and more automatic they become. Eventually, they require no conscious thought to activate. This is why limiting beliefs feel so real and powerful. They're not just thoughts. They're physical structures in your brain that have been strengthened through repetition over years or even decades. Here's where it gets really interesting. Your brain doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's vividly imagined. When you visualize failure, worry about worst-case scenarios, or replay past mistakes in your mind, you're actually strengthening the same neural pathways as if those negative experiences were happening right now. Every time you think a limiting thought, you're literally building the brain structure that makes that limitation more likely to manifest in your reality. This is controlled by something called the reticular activating system, or RAS. Your RAS is like a filter that determines what information reaches your conscious awareness. Right now, there are millions of pieces of information hitting your senses, but your brain can only process a tiny fraction of them consciously. Your RAS decides what gets through based on what it has been programmed to consider important. If your RAS is programmed to look for evidence that you're not good enough, it will filter reality to show you examples of your inadequacy while ignoring evidence of your capability. If it's programmed to expect failure, it will notice every setback while overlooking opportunities. If it's programmed to believe that success is for other people, it will highlight every story of others' achievements while making your own potential invisible to you. This filtering system is so powerful that it literally creates your subjective reality. Two people can experience the exact same situation and come away with completely different interpretations based on how their RAS is programmed. The pessimist sees problems everywhere while the optimist sees opportunities in the same circumstances. Neither is wrong. They're both seeing what their brains have been trained to show them. The most successful people understand this principle and use it to their advantage. They deliberately program their RAS to look for opportunities, solutions, and evidence of their capabilities. They train their brains to filter reality in ways that support their goals rather than undermine them. This isn't positive thinking or self-deception. This is strategic brain programming based on how the mind actually works. But here's what most people don't realize. You're already programming your RAS every day through the thoughts you think, the content you consume, the conversations you have, and the environments you expose yourself to. The question isn't whether your brain is being programmed. The question is whether you're programming it intentionally or letting it be programmed by default. Default programming comes from your environment, your past experiences, and the collective unconscious patterns of the culture you live in. Most of these patterns are based on limitation, scarcity, and fear because those are the dominant frequencies in most people's consciousness. When you don't take conscious control of your mental programming, you automatically inherit these collective limitations as your own. Intentional programming requires you to become aware of what you're feeding your mind and make deliberate choices about the thoughts you think, the images you visualize, and the beliefs you reinforce. It means taking responsibility for the neural pathways you're strengthening every day and making sure they align with who you want to become rather than who you've been. The process of reprogramming your brain is like renovating a house while you're living in it. You can't just tear everything down at once. You have to systematically replace old structures with new ones while maintaining functionality. In brain terms, this means building new neural pathways while gradually weakening the old ones that no longer serve you. This process takes time and consistency, but the results are profound. When you successfully reprogram your brain, limiting beliefs lose their power over you. Fear becomes a signal rather than a stop sign. Obstacles become puzzles to solve rather than walls to stop you. Your automatic responses shift from protecting you from failure to driving you towards success. The science is clear. Your brain is constantly changing based on how you use it. Every thought you think, every image you visualize, and every action you take is either reinforcing your current limitations or building your future capabilities. The choice of which direction to go is always yours. But most people never realize they have this choice because they've never been taught how their brain actually works. Understanding the neuroscience of limitation is the first step toward transcending those limitations. Once you see how your brain creates your reality, you can begin the process of creating a new reality by building a new brain. The techniques exist. The only question is whether you're willing to use them. Chapter 4. Breaking the Code. The Psychology of Unstoppable Confidence. Confidence is not a personality trait. It's not something you're born with or without. It's not determined by your genetics, your upbringing, or your past experiences. Confidence is a skill, and like any skill, it can be developed through understanding and practice. Most people have a completely backwards understanding of how confidence works. They think confidence comes from success. So, they wait to feel confident until after they've achieved something. But this creates an impossible loop. You need confidence to take the actions that create success. But you're waiting for success to give you confidence. This is why most people stay stuck in hesitation and self-doubt. Real confidence works in the opposite direction. Confidence is what creates success, not what results from it. Every breakthrough in your life will happen because you chose to act before you felt ready, not because you waited until you felt capable. The people who seem naturally confident aren't more talented or lucky. They've simply learned to generate confidence internally rather than waiting for external circumstances to provide it. Here's the truth about confidence that changes everything. Confidence is not the absence of fear or doubt. Confident people feel the same fears and doubts as everyone else. The difference is that they've trained themselves to act in spite of those feelings rather than being paralyzed by them. They've learned to redefine confidence from feeling certain to taking action despite uncertainty. This distinction is crucial because it means you don't have to wait to feel confident to start acting confident. You can begin developing confidence immediately by practicing confident behaviors regardless of how you feel internally. Your brain will eventually catch up and align your internal state with your external actions. Confidence is built through a process called experiential learning. Every time you do something that scares you and survive the experience, you build evidence in your subconscious mind that you're more capable than you previously believed. Every time you take action despite fear, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with courage and weaken the pathways associated with avoidance. But here's where most people go wrong. They try to build confidence by taking on massive challenges that overwhelm their nervous system. When they inevitably struggle or fail, they interpret this as evidence that they're not confident people, which reinforces their original programming. The secret to building unstoppable confidence is to start with challenges that are just outside your comfort zone, but not so far outside that they trigger panic. You want to stretch yourself enough to prove that you're more capable than you thought, but not so much that you reinforce feelings of inadequacy. This is called progressive exposure, and it's the same principle used to help people overcome phobias. You gradually expose yourself to increasingly challenging situations, building confidence and capability at each level before moving to the next. Each success becomes evidence that supports a new identity as someone who is brave, capable, and unstoppable. Your identity is the foundation of your confidence. If you see yourself as someone who is naturally insecure or socially awkward, your brain will work to keep your behavior consistent with that identity. But if you begin to see yourself as someone who is developing confidence through practice, every small brave action becomes proof of your new identity. The most powerful confidence-building technique is called acting as if. You begin to act as if you're already the confident person you want to become. You stand like they would stand, speak like they would speak, and make decisions like they would make decisions. At first, this feels fake or uncomfortable because it doesn't match your internal programming. But your brain doesn't know the difference between an action you took because you felt confident and an action you took to develop confidence. It only registers the action and strengthens the neural pathways accordingly. This is why confident body language actually makes you feel more confident. It's why speaking up in meetings increases your sense of personal power. It's why taking on leadership roles develops leadership qualities. Your external actions literally rewire your internal programming. But confidence isn't just about taking bold action. True confidence also requires developing emotional resilience. This means learning to bounce back quickly from setbacks, criticism, and failures without letting them define your self-worth. Resilient people don't experience fewer problems than others. They just recover faster and maintain their sense of capability regardless of external circumstances. Emotional resilience is built by changing your relationship with failure and rejection. Instead of seeing them as evidence of your inadequacy, you learn to see them as information that helps you improve. Instead of taking them personally, you recognize them as normal parts of any growth process. Instead of letting them stop you, you use them as fuel to prove that you're tougher than your circumstances. The final component of unstoppable confidence is developing what psychologists call internal locus of control. This means believing that your actions have more influence over your outcomes than external circumstances. Do people with internal locus of control take responsibility for their results and focus on what they can change rather than feeling victimized by what they can't control? When you combine progressive exposure, identity shifting, acting as if emotional resilience, and internal locus of control, you create a confidence that isn't dependent on external validation or perfect circumstances. You develop an unshakable sense of your own capability that grows stronger with every challenge you face. This isn't about becoming arrogant or overconfident. True confidence is quiet and steady. It doesn't need to prove itself to others because it's not based on comparison or competition. It's based on an internal knowing that you can handle whatever life throws at you and that you're constantly growing in your ability to create the results you want. Building this level of confidence requires consistent practice and patience with the process. But once you develop it, it becomes your greatest asset. Confident people get more opportunities, build better relationships, earn more money, and create more impact because confidence is magnetic. People are naturally drawn to those who believe in themselves and their ability to create value in the world. The confidence you want already exists within you. It's not something you have to create from nothing. It's something you have to uncover by removing the layers of conditioning that have convinced you it's not there. Every person who has ever achieved anything significant had to access this same inner confidence despite their circumstances, background or past experiences. Chapter 5. The Identity Shift. Becoming the person who gets results. The most powerful force in human psychology is the need to remain consistent with how we see ourselves. Your identity is like a thermostat that automatically regulates your behavior to maintain alignment with who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who struggles with money, you'll unconsciously make financial decisions that keep you struggling. If you see yourself as someone who is unlucky in relationships, you'll sabotage connections that could lead to love. If you see yourself as someone who starts things but doesn't finish them, you'll find ways to quit just before breakthrough moments. This is why most attempts at change fail. People try to modify their behaviors without changing their identity. They want to act differently while continuing to see themselves the same way. But your behaviors will always snap back to match your identity like a rubber band returning to its original shape. The secret to permanent transformation is to change your identity first. Then let your behaviors naturally align with who you've become. When you truly see yourself as a different person, acting differently doesn't require willpower. It becomes the natural expression of who you are. Identity change happens at the subconscious level, which means you can't just decide to see yourself differently and expect it to stick. Your subconscious mind needs evidence to support a new identity, and that evidence comes through repeated actions that prove you're becoming someone new. Here's how the process works. You start by deciding who you want to become, not just what you want to achieve. Instead of focusing on losing weight, you focus on becoming someone who treats their body with respect. Instead of focusing on making more money, you focus on becoming someone who creates value in the world. Instead of focusing on finding love, you focus on becoming someone who is worthy of love and capable of giving it. Once you've defined your new identity, you begin taking small actions that someone with that identity would take. You don't wait until you feel like that person. You act like that person first and the feelings follow. Every time you act in alignment with your new identity, you're casting a vote for who you're becoming. Every time you act inconsistent with your old identity, you're casting a vote against who you used to be. The key is to start with such small actions that your subconscious mind doesn't resist them. If you want to become someone who exercises regularly, you might start by doing one push-up every morning. If you want to become someone who reads personal development books, you might start by reading 1 page per day. If you want to become someone who takes bold action, you might start by speaking up once in every meeting. These micro-actions seem insignificant, but they're incredibly powerful because they create identity-level change without triggering the resistance that comes with dramatic behavior changes. Your subconscious mind accepts small shifts much more easily than big ones. As you consistently take identity-aligned actions, something remarkable happens. You start to accumulate evidence that you really are becoming this new person. Your self-talk changes from "I'm trying to be healthier" to "I'm someone who takes care of their body." Your decision-making changes because you automatically ask yourself, "What would someone with my new identity do in this situation?" This shift in self-perception creates what psychologists call a positive feedback loop. The more you act like your new identity, the more evidence you have that you are that person. The more evidence you have, the easier it becomes to continue acting that way. The easier it becomes to act that way, the more natural it feels until eventually the new behaviors become automatic. But identity change isn't just about taking new actions. It's also about releasing old identities that no longer serve you. Most people cling to outdated versions of themselves because those identities feel familiar and safe, even when they're limiting. You might have gotten comfortable seeing yourself as someone who was naturally disorganized, socially awkward, or bad with money because those identities provide excuses for why you don't have to push yourself harder. Releasing limiting identities requires grieving the loss of who you used to be. There's often a sense of sadness or loss when you let go of familiar patterns, even when those patterns were holding you back. This is normal and necessary. You can't become someone new without saying goodbye to who you used to be. The most successful people are masters of identity shifting. They don't just set goals and hope they achieve them. They systematically transform themselves into the type of person who naturally achieves those goals. They understand that sustainable change happens from the inside out, not from the outside in. This is why lottery winners often lose their money within a few years. Their external circumstances change dramatically, but their internal identity remained the same. Eventually, their behaviors aligned with their identity as someone who doesn't have money, and they unconsciously found ways to return to their familiar financial situation. Conversely, people who build wealth slowly and steadily rarely lose it because they've become someone who thinks, acts, and makes decisions like a wealthy person. Their wealth is an expression of their identity, not an accident or stroke of luck. The same principle applies to every area of life. Healthy people don't struggle to maintain their health because being healthy is part of who they are, not something they do. Confident people don't have to work to feel confident because confidence is part of their identity, not a state they try to achieve. Successful people don't have to force themselves to work hard because excellence is part of who they are, not something they do when they feel motivated. Identity shifting is the difference between temporary behavior change and permanent transformation. When you change your identity, you change your life at the source level. Everything else becomes a natural extension of who you've decided to become. The process requires patience because identity change happens gradually through consistent action over time. But once the shift occurs, maintaining your new reality becomes effortless because you're no longer fighting against your nature. You're expressing it. Chapter 6. The 5-second neural hijack. Overriding your default programming. Your brain makes decisions in microsecond songs long before your conscious mind even realizes a choice needs to be made. Between the moment you recognize an opportunity and the moment you decide whether to act on it, there's a 5-second window where your entire future gets determined. In those 5 seconds, your subconscious programming either pushes you toward growth or pulls you back into comfort. Most people lose this battle before they even know it's happening. They feel the impulse to speak up in a meeting, but within seconds, doubt creeps in and they stay silent. They see an opportunity to introduce themselves to someone interesting, but hesitation wins and they let the moment pass. They know they should start working on their important project, but procrastination kicks in and they find something easier to do instead. This is your default programming in action. Your subconscious mind has been trained to associate unfamiliar actions with danger. So, it floods your system with just enough resistance to keep you safe in familiar territory. The resistance doesn't feel dramatic. It feels like logical thinking. Maybe I should prepare more first. This probably isn't the right time. I'll do it tomorrow when I'm more ready. But here's what changes everything. You can hijack this process. You can override your default programming by taking immediate action within that 5-second window before your subconscious has time to talk you out of it. The moment you feel an impulse toward growth, you count backwards from 5 to 1 and physically move your body toward the action before doubt can set in. This technique works because hesitation is a neurological response, not a rational decision. When you feel resistance to taking action, your brain is literally activating the same neural pathways it would use if you were facing physical danger. Stress hormones flood your system. Your heart rate increases and your mind starts generating reasons to avoid the perceived threat. But if you move your body before this stress response fully activates, you interrupt the pattern. Physical movement sends a signal to your brain that you're taking action despite the perceived danger, which begins to rewire your neural pathways to associate bold action with safety instead of threat. The counting mechanism is crucial because it engages your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, which overrides the emotional impulses coming from your limbic system. When you count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you're literally switching from emotional processing to logical processing, which gives you just enough mental space to choose courage over comfort. Every time you use this technique successfully, you're creating new neural pathways that make confident action easier in the future. You're training your brain to see bold moves as normal rather than threatening. You're building what neuroscientists call action patterns that eventually become automatic responses. The key is to use this technique for small actions at first. Don't try to completely transform your life in one bold move. Instead, use it to speak up once per day, to introduce yourself to one new person per week, or to work on your important project for just 5 minutes when you feel resistance. These small victories accumulate into massive confidence over time. Most people never reach their potential because they think too much and act too little. They analyze every decision to death, waiting for perfect certainty that never comes. But certainty is overrated. The most successful people are comfortable making decisions with incomplete information because they know that action creates clarity, not the other way around. Your 5-second window is where your future gets created or destroyed. Every time you hesitate when you know you should act, you're voting for the person you've always been. Every time you move within 5 seconds of recognizing an opportunity, you're voting for the person you're becoming. The choice happens dozens of times per day. In 5-second increments, you're either building the neural pathways of confidence and action or you're reinforcing the neural pathways of hesitation and regret. There is no neutral. Every moment of hesitation makes the next hesitation more likely. Every moment of bold action makes the next bold action more natural. This isn't about being reckless or impulsive. This is about training yourself to act on your highest impulses before your programming can talk you out of them. Your first instinct is usually your best instinct because it comes from your authentic self before fear and conditioning cloud your judgment. The 5-second rule becomes your secret weapon against self-sabotage. When your brain tries to protect you from the discomfort of growth, you have a proven technique to override its resistance. When doubt tries to keep you playing small, you have a method to choose expansion anyway. When fear tries to convince you to wait for better conditions, you have a way to act despite imperfect circumstances. Master this technique and you master your life. Because success isn't about having perfect conditions or unlimited confidence. Success is about acting like the person you want to become, even when every part of you wants to stay the same. Chapter 7, The Subconscious Reprogramming Protocol. Installing new mental software. Your subconscious mind is like a computer that runs on outdated software. Most of your current programming was installed when you were a child. When your brain was highly impressionable and you had no filter for what beliefs to accept or reject. Now, decades later, you're running your adult life on software that was designed for a completely different operating system. The problem is that your subconscious doesn't update automatically. Unlike your phone or computer, which regularly downloads new software to improve performance, your mental programming stays frozen in time unless you consciously intervene. This means you might be navigating today's challenges with yesterday's limitations using strategies that made sense when you were young but are completely inadequate for your current reality. Reprogramming your subconscious requires understanding how it learns. Your subconscious mind doesn't process information the same way your conscious mind does. It doesn't respond to logic, reasoning, or willpower. It responds to repetition, emotion, and vivid imagery. This is why affirmations work for some people, but not others. Simply repeating positive statements isn't enough. You have to engage your subconscious in its native language. The most effective way to reprogram your subconscious is through a process called mental rehearsal. This involves vividly imagining yourself successfully performing the behaviors and achieving the outcomes you want. But this isn't passive daydreaming. This is active mental practice that literally rewires your neural pathways. When you visualize an action, your brain fires the same neural pathways as when you actually perform that action. From your brain's perspective, there's no difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. This is why athletes spend hours mentally rehearsing their performances. They're not just imagining success. They're training their brains to execute successfully when the moment comes. Your visualization sessions must be specific, detailed, and emotionally engaging. Instead of generally imagining yourself being successful, you need to see yourself confidently walking into specific situations, handling particular challenges, and feeling specific emotions. The more detailed your mental rehearsal, the more effectively it programs your subconscious. But visualization alone isn't enough. You also need to use what psychologists call embodied learning. This means physically practicing the behaviors you want to become automatic. If you want to be more confident, you practice confident body language. If you want to be more decisive, you practice making quick decisions about small things. If you want to be more disciplined, you practice following through on tiny commitments. Your subconscious learns through pattern recognition. Every time you repeat a behavior, you're strengthening the neural pathway associated with that behavior. Eventually, the pathway becomes so strong that the behavior becomes automatic. This is how habits form, but it's also how you can deliberately create new automatic responses. The key is consistency over intensity. It's better to practice your new programming for 10 minutes every day than for 2 hours once a week. Your subconscious needs constant reinforcement to accept new patterns as legitimate. Sporadic effort creates confusion, but consistent effort creates transformation. You also need to address the emotional component of your programming. Most limiting beliefs aren't just thoughts. They're thoughts with strong emotional charges attached to them. If you experienced rejection in childhood, the memory isn't just stored as information. It's stored with all the emotions you felt at the time. When similar situations arise in your adult life, those old emotions get triggered automatically. To reprogram these emotional patterns, you need to create new emotional experiences that contradict your old programming. If your subconscious believes that taking risks leads to rejection, you need to take small risks that lead to positive outcomes. If your subconscious believes that you're not capable of success, you need to accumulate evidence of your capability through incremental victories. This process requires patience because you're literally rewiring decades of mental conditioning. Your old programming didn't develop overnight, and it won't disappear overnight. But with consistent effort, you can create new neural pathways that are stronger than your old ones. The most powerful reprogramming happens during the theta brainwave state, which occurs naturally right before you fall asleep and right after you wake up. During these periods, your conscious mind is less active and your subconscious is more receptive to new programming. This is the optimal time for visualization. Affirmations and identity work. Many people give up on subconscious reprogramming because they expect immediate results. But neuroplasticity is a gradual process. You might not notice changes for several weeks, then suddenly realize that you're automatically responding differently to situations that used to trigger your old patterns. The goal isn't to completely eliminate your old programming. The goal is to install new programming that's stronger and more aligned with who you want to become. Your old patterns may still exist in your neural network, but they become dormant while your new patterns become dominant. Once your new programming is fully installed, maintaining it becomes effortless. You don't have to think about being confident, disciplined, or successful. These qualities become automatic expressions of who you were at the subconscious level. This is the difference between people who struggle to maintain positive changes and people who seem to effortlessly operate at high levels. The struggling people are using willpower to override their programming. The successful people have reprogrammed their subconscious to support their goals automatically. Chapter 8. The Fear Immunity System, Turning Anxiety into Rocket Fuel. Fear is not your enemy. It's your navigation system. But most people have been taught to avoid fear, suppress it, or wait for it to go away before taking action. This approach turns fear into a prison that keeps you trapped in your comfort zone, watching your dreams from a distance while life passes you by. The most successful people in the world have a completely different relationship with fear. They don't feel less fear than everyone else. They feel fear and use it as fuel for action rather than an excuse for inaction. They've developed what I call fear immunity. Not the absence of fear, but the ability to function at peak performance while fear is present. Fear immunity is a learnable skill. Your current relationship with fear was programmed into you through your early experiences and cultural conditioning. You learn to interpret fear as a stop sign rather than a compass. You learn to see anxiety as evidence that something is wrong rather than evidence that something important is happening. But you can reprogram this relationship. You can train your nervous system to interpret fear as excitement rather than danger. You can condition yourself to move toward fear rather than away from it. You can transform the same physiological sensations that used to paralyze you into the energy that propels you forward. The first step is understanding what fear actually is. Fear is not a prediction of future failure. It's your nervous system's way of alerting you that you're about to do something that could change your life. The bigger the potential change, the stronger the fear. This means that the things you're most afraid of are often the things you most need to do. Your brain can't tell the difference between real danger and imagined danger. When you think about giving a presentation, starting a business, or approaching someone attractive, your amygdala responds as if you're being chased by a predator. It floods your system with stress hormones and activates your fight-or-flight response. Even though the actual situation poses no physical threat, this physiological response isn't defective, it's perfectly normal. The problem is that most people interpret these sensations as evidence that they should avoid the situation. But these same sensations can be reinterpreted as evidence that you're about to do something important and meaningful. Elite performers understand this principle. Professional athletes feel massive anxiety before competition, but they've learned to channel that energy into peak performance. Successful entrepreneurs feel terror before launching new ventures, but they've learned to use that intensity as motivation to prepare thoroughly and execute precisely. The technique is called anxiety reappraisal. Instead of trying to calm down when you feel fear, you tell yourself, "I'm excited." This works because excitement and anxiety create identical physiological sensations. The difference is only in how you interpret those sensations. When you reframe anxiety as excitement, you maintain the same energy level while shifting from a negative emotional state to a positive one. But reappraisal is just the beginning. True fear immunity requires systematic desensitization. This means deliberately exposing yourself to progressively larger fears until your nervous system learns that survival doesn't depend on staying in your comfort zone. You start with fears that create moderate anxiety. Speaking up in a meeting, trying a new restaurant alone, or posting something personal on social media. You expose yourself to these situations repeatedly until they no longer trigger significant anxiety. Then you move on to bigger fears, building your tolerance gradually like a muscle each time you face a fear and survive the experience. You're creating new neural pathways that associate courage with safety rather than danger. You're building what psychologists call mastery experiences. Memories of successfully handling challenging situations that your brain can reference when facing future challenges. The key is to approach fear with curiosity rather than resistance. When you feel afraid, instead of asking, "How can I avoid this?" ask, "What is this fear trying to teach me?" Instead of seeing fear as evidence of weakness, see it as evidence that you're pushing beyond your current limitations. Most people live their entire lives within the boundaries of their original comfort zone, never discovering what they're truly capable of. They mistake their comfort zone for their capability zone, not realizing that their greatest potential lies on the other side of their greatest fears. Fear immunity doesn't mean becoming reckless or ignoring genuine dangers. It means developing the ability to distinguish between real threats and imaginary ones. Then acting courageously in the face of imaginary threats while taking appropriate precautions against real ones. The goal is to reach a state where fear becomes information rather than instruction, You feel the fear. Acknowledge what it's telling you. Then make decisions based on your values and goals rather than your anxieties and insecurities. When you develop true fear immunity, you gain access to a level of personal power that most people never experience. You can pursue opportunities that others are too afraid to even consider. You can take risks that others view as impossible. You can create a life that others admire but would never dare attempt themselves. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it happens faster than most people expect. With consistent practice, you can develop significant fear immunity within months rather than years. The key is to start where you are and systematically expand your courage zone one fear at a time. Remember, on the other side of your fear is everything you want. Your dreams aren't hiding in your comfort zone. They're waiting for you in the space that currently feels scary and uncertain. Fear immunity is your ticket to that space. Chapter 9. The Mental Fortress. Building unshakable psychological resilience. Life will test you. It will challenge your beliefs, question your resolve, and push you to your breaking point. The difference between people who thrive and people who merely survive isn't the absence of adversity in their lives. It's their ability to remain psychologically strong regardless of external circumstances. Most people's mental state fluctuates based on what's happening around them. When things go well, they feel confident and optimistic. When things go poorly, they feel defeated and hopeless. This makes them vulnerable to every setback, criticism, and unexpected challenge that life throws their way. But there's another way to live. You can develop what I call a mental fortress, an unshakable psychological foundation that remains stable regardless of external turbulence. This isn't about becoming emotionally numb or disconnected from reality. This is about building the internal strength to handle whatever comes while maintaining your sense of purpose and self-worth. The foundation of psychological resilience is understanding the difference between what you can control and what you can't. Most people waste enormous mental energy trying to control things that are completely outside their influence. Other people's opinions, unexpected events, past mistakes, or future uncertainties. This creates anxiety, frustration, and a constant sense of powerlessness. Resilient people focus exclusively on what they can control: their thoughts, their actions, their responses, and their decisions. They don't ignore external circumstances, but they don't let external circumstances determine their internal state. They operate from a place of personal agency rather than victimhood. This shift in focus creates what psychologists call internal locus of control. Instead of feeling like life happens to them, they recognize that they happen to life. Instead of being reactive, they become proactive. Instead of being victims of circumstance, they become architects of their experience. Building psychological resilience requires training your mind like an athlete trains their body. You don't just hope you'll be strong when challenges arise. You systematically prepare for adversity by exposing yourself to controlled stress and practicing recovery techniques. One of the most powerful resilience-building practices is called stress inoculation. This involves deliberately putting yourself in mildly stressful situations so you can practice maintaining composure and pressure. You might take cold showers to practice staying calm when uncomfortable. You might do public speaking to practice performing when anxious. You might take on challenging projects to practice persevering when things get difficult. Each time you successfully navigate a stressful situation, you're building evidence in your subconscious mind that you can handle adversity. You're creating what researchers call resilience resources. Memories of successfully coping with challenges that your brain can reference when facing future difficulties. But resilience isn't just about handling stress. It's also about recovering quickly from setbacks. Resilient people don't experience fewer failures than others. They just bounce back faster and extract more learning from each experience. The key to rapid recovery is developing emotional regulation skills. This means learning to process difficult emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Instead of suppressing negative emotions or being consumed by them, you acknowledge them. Understand what they're telling you. Then choose how to respond. This process requires what psychologists call metacognition, the ability to think about your thinking. You develop the capacity to step back from your emotional reactions and observe them objectively. This creates space between you and your emotions, which prevents them from controlling your behavior. Resilient people also have what researchers call a growth mindset. They see challenges as opportunities to develop rather than threats to avoid. They interpret setbacks as feedback rather than failures. They view criticism as information rather than attacks on their character. This mindset shift is crucial because it changes how your brain processes adversity. Instead of activating threat detection systems that trigger fight-or-flight responses, challenges activate learning systems that promote adaptation and growth. The same situation that would overwhelm someone with a fixed mindset becomes fuel for development in someone with a growth mindset. Another key component of psychological resilience is having a clear sense of purpose. When you know why you're doing what you're doing, temporary setbacks become less significant. Your purpose provides context that helps you see challenges as part of a larger journey rather than evidence that you should quit. Purpose also provides what Viktor Frankl called meaning-making capacity. Even in difficult circumstances, you can find significance and value in your experience. This doesn't mean being grateful for suffering, but it means extracting wisdom and strength from whatever situation you find yourself in. The most resilient people also understand the importance of community and support systems. They don't try to handle everything alone. They build networks of relationships that provide encouragement, advice, and practical assistance when needed. They're not afraid to ask for help when appropriate, and they're willing to offer help to others in return. Building a mental fortress isn't about becoming invulnerable to life's challenges. It's about developing the capacity to remain centered and purposeful regardless of external circumstances. It's about creating an inner stability that allows you to navigate turbulence without losing your direction. This level of resilience becomes your greatest competitive advantage. While others are paralyzed by uncertainty or overwhelmed by pressure, you remain clear, focused, and effective while others are derailed by setbacks. You adapt and continue moving forward. While others are consumed by anxiety about the future, you remain present and proactive. The techniques exist to build this level of psychological strength. The only question is whether you're willing to do the work to develop it. Because in a world full of uncertainty and challenge, mental resilience isn't just an advantage. It's a necessity for anyone who wants to create something meaningful with their life. Chapter 10. The Focus Algorithm. Training your mind for laser-sharp concentration. In today's world, your ability to focus is your greatest competitive advantage. While everyone around you is distracted, scattered, and operating at the surface level of their capability, deep focus allows you to produce extraordinary results in less time with higher quality than people who are constantly multitasking. But focus isn't just about productivity. Focus is about accessing flow states where you perform at levels that surprise even yourself. It's about developing the mental discipline to pursue long-term goals despite short-term temptations. It's about training your mind to be fully present in whatever you're doing rather than constantly pulled in multiple directions. Most people have completely destroyed their ability to focus without even realizing it. They've trained their brains to crave constant stimulation and instant gratification. They can't sit through a movie without checking their phone. They can't read a book for more than a few minutes without getting restless. They can't work on important projects without being pulled toward easier, more immediately rewarding activities. This isn't a character flaw. This is the predictable result of living in an environment designed to fracture your attention. Social media algorithms are specifically engineered to be addictive. News cycles are designed to create anxiety that keeps you checking for updates. Entertainment platforms use sophisticated psychological techniques to keep you consuming content rather than creating value. Every time you give into these distractions, you're weakening your focus muscle. Every time you switch between tasks, you're training your brain to be scattered. Every time you choose immediate gratification over long-term benefit, you're programming yourself for mediocrity. But you can reverse this process. Focus is a skill that can be developed through deliberate practice. The same neuroplasticity that allowed distractions to hijack your attention can be used to rebuild your concentration abilities. The first step is understanding how attention actually works. Your brain has two attention systems: focused attention and diffuse attention. Focused attention is like a laser beam that allows you to concentrate intensely on specific tasks. Diffuse attention is like a floodlight that allows you to make broad connections and generate creative insights. Both systems are important, but most people spend too much time in diffuse mode and not enough time in focused mode. They're constantly switching between different inputs without ever going deep on any single task. This creates the illusion of productivity while actually preventing you from producing anything of real value. High performers alternate deliberately between focused and diffuse modes. They spend concentrated blocks of time in deep focus, then take breaks that allow their minds to wander and make connections. This rhythm maximizes both productivity and creativity. Building focus requires what researchers call attention training. This means practicing the ability to sustain concentration on a single object or task for extended periods. The most effective attention training is meditation, which is essentially exercise for your focus muscle. When you meditate, you're practicing the fundamental skill of noticing when your mind has wandered and gently bringing it back to your chosen focus point. This is exactly the same skill you need for deep work, meaningful conversations, and any activity that requires sustained mental effort. But you don't need to become a meditation master to develop powerful focus. You can build concentration through what I call focus lading. Start with just 5 minutes of sustained attention on a single task. When 5 minutes becomes easy, extend to 10 minutes. When 10 minutes becomes easy, extend to 20 minutes. Gradually build your capacity like you would build physical strength. The key is eliminating distractions during your focus blocks. This means turning off notifications, closing unnecessary browser tabs, putting your phone in another room, and creating an environment that supports concentration rather than disrupting it. Your environment either supports your focus or destroys it. There is no neutral. You also need to train your brain to delay gratification. Every time you feel the urge to check social media, read the news, or engage in any other form of digital distraction, practice waiting 5 minutes before giving in. This builds what psychologists call impulse control, which is essential for maintaining focus on important tasks. Another powerful focus technique is called time boxing. Instead of working on tasks until they're finished, you work on them for predetermined time periods. This creates urgency that prevents your mind from wandering and helps you maintain intensity throughout the session. During your focus blocks, practice what researchers call monotasking, doing only one thing at a time. Multitasking is actually task switching, which reduces your effectiveness and increases the time required to complete each task. True productivity comes from doing one thing at a time with complete attention. The goal is to develop what psychologists call effortless concentration, the ability to sustain deep focus without feeling like you're fighting against your natural tendencies. This happens when your focus practices become habits and your brain adapts to longer periods of sustained attention. When you master focus, you gain access to what researchers call flow states, periods of peak performance, where you're completely absorbed in your activity and producing your best work. Flow states are characterized by effortless concentration, intrinsic motivation, and a sense of timelessness. These states aren't mystical experiences reserved for elite performers. They're natural neurological states that anyone can access by creating the right conditions. Clear goals, immediate feedback, and challenges that match your skill level are the prerequisites for flow. Deep focus is the pathway. The ability to focus deeply in a distracted world is becoming increasingly rare and therefore increasingly valuable. While others are consumed by digital noise and shallow thinking, your capacity for sustained concentration allows you to produce work that stands out, solve problems that others can't solve, and create value that commands premium compensation. This isn't just about professional success. Focus also deepens your relationships, enhances your experiences, and increases your sense of fulfillment. When you're fully present in whatever you're doing, life becomes richer and more meaningful. Building powerful focus requires consistent practice and patience with the process, but the investment pays dividends that compound over time. Every minute you spend strengthening your concentration muscle increases your capacity to achieve extraordinary results in every area of your life. Chapter 11. The Momentum Protocol: Creating Unstoppable Forward Motion. Momentum is the most underestimated force in human psychology. It's the difference between people who occasionally take action and people who create consistent extraordinary results. It's the reason why some individuals seem to effortlessly achieve goal after goal while others struggle to maintain progress for more than a few weeks. Most people completely misunderstand how momentum works. They think momentum comes from motivation, so they wait to feel inspired before taking action. They think momentum comes from perfect conditions, so they wait for the right time to begin. They think momentum comes from having everything figured out, so they wait for complete clarity before moving forward. But this backwards thinking is exactly why they never build real momentum in the first place. True momentum is created through a completely different process. It starts with action, not feeling. It builds through consistency, not intensity. It grows through small wins, not grand gestures. And once you understand how to generate momentum systematically, you can apply this force to transform any area of your life faster than you ever thought possible. The first principle of momentum is that starting is everything. Your brain has two modes, starting mode and stopping mode. When you're in stopping mode, every task feels overwhelming. Every obstacle seems insurmountable and every excuse feels valid. But when you're in starting mode, solutions appear, energy increases, and forward motion feels natural. The challenge is that most people wait to feel like starting before they begin. But feeling like starting is the result of starting, not the cause of it. This creates an impossible catch-22 where you're waiting for a feeling that can only come from doing the thing you're avoiding. Breaking this cycle requires what I call activation energy. The minimum amount of action required to shift from stopping mode to starting mode. This is usually much smaller than people think. Often just 5 minutes of focused effort is enough to generate the momentum needed to continue for hours. The key is to make your activation energy as small as possible. If you want to write a book, your activation energy might be writing one sentence. If you want to get in shape, your activation energy might be putting on your workout clothes. If you want to start a business, your activation energy might be researching one potential idea for 10 minutes. These micro commitments seem insignificant, but they're incredibly powerful because they bypass the resistance that prevents most people from starting. Your subconscious mind won't fight against writing one sentence the way it would fight against writing an entire chapter. Once you start, momentum naturally builds and you often end up doing much more than you originally committed to. But starting is just the beginning. Maintaining momentum requires understanding the psychology of progress. Your brain needs to feel like it's making progress to stay motivated. Without a sense of advancement, even the most determined people eventually lose steam and give up. This is why tracking your progress is so crucial. You need visible evidence that your efforts are creating results, even when those results are small. This could be as simple as marking days on a calendar when you take action, keeping a simple log of your activities, or using any system that makes your progress tangible. The most effective progress tracking focuses on inputs, not outcomes. Instead of tracking whether you lost weight, you track how many days you exercised. Instead of tracking how much money you made, you track how many sales calls you made. Instead of tracking whether you feel confident, you track how many times you acted confidently despite feeling nervous. This distinction is crucial because you have complete control over your inputs, but only partial control over your outcomes. When you focus on outcomes, you can do everything right and still feel like you're failing if the results don't come quickly enough. But when you focus on inputs, you can feel successful every single day. Because success is defined by taking the actions, not by achieving specific results. Momentum also requires what researchers call progressive overload. Just like building muscle requires gradually increasing the weight you lift, building momentum requires gradually increasing the challenges you take on. You start with actions that are easy enough to maintain consistency, then slowly increase the difficulty as your capacity grows. This prevents the common mistake of taking on too much too soon, which leads to burnout and eventual abandonment of your goals. Progressive overload allows you to build capability steadily while maintaining the consistency that feeds momentum. Another critical component of momentum is celebration. Most people are terrible at acknowledging their progress because they're constantly focused on how far they still have to go. But your brain needs positive reinforcement to maintain motivation over time. Every small win should be acknowledged and celebrated, not dismissed as insignificant. This doesn't mean throwing a party every time you complete a simple task. It means taking a moment to recognize that you did what you said you would do, which is actually a significant achievement in a world where most people consistently break promises to themselves. The compound effect of momentum is where the real magic happens. Small consistent actions compound over time to create results that seem impossible from your current vantage point. This is why people who build momentum systematically often achieve in months what others struggle to achieve in years. But momentum can work against you just as powerfully as it can work for you. Every day you don't take action toward your goals, you're building momentum in the opposite direction. You're strengthening neural pathways associated with procrastination, avoidance, and giving up. You're programming your subconscious to expect failure rather than success. This is why consistency is more important than intensity. It's better to take small actions every day than to take massive action once per week. Daily action builds forward momentum, while sporadic action builds a pattern of inconsistency that your brain interprets as evidence that you're not serious about your goals. The goal is to reach what I call momentum escape velocity. The point where maintaining progress becomes easier than stopping progress. This happens when your new behaviors become habits and your identity shifts to align with someone who naturally takes consistent action toward their goals. Once you reach escape velocity, momentum becomes self-sustaining. You don't have to force yourself to take action because action becomes your default response. You don't have to motivate yourself to continue because continuing feels more natural than quitting. You don't have to discipline yourself to maintain progress because progress becomes automatic. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it happens faster than most people expect. With the right system and consistent application, you can build significant momentum within weeks and reach escape velocity within months. The momentum protocol is simple but not easy. It requires you to start before you feel ready. Continue when you don't feel like it and trust the process even when progress feels slow. But once you experience the power of true momentum, you'll never want to live without it again. Remember, every moment you're either building momentum toward your goals or building momentum away from them. There is no neutral. The choice of which direction to build momentum is always yours, but the choice must be made through action, not intention. Chapter 12. The Elite Performance Matrix. Operating at Peak Mental Capacity. There's a reason why some people seem to effortlessly operate at levels that others find exhausting to even imagine. They're not more talented, luckier, or genetically superior. They've learned to access and sustain peak mental states that allow them to perform at their highest capacity consistently rather than occasionally. Most people experience peak performance randomly. They have moments of extraordinary focus, creativity, or execution, but they can't predict when these states will occur or deliberately create them. This leaves them at the mercy of their circumstances, hoping that inspiration will strike when they need it most. Elite performers take a completely different approach. They understand that peak states are not accidents or gifts from the universe. They're the predictable result of specific mental, physical, and environmental conditions. And once you know how to create these conditions systematically, you can access your highest levels of performance on demand. The foundation of elite performance is understanding the neuroscience of optimal functioning. Your brain has different states of activation that are suited for different types of activities. The same mental state that's perfect for creative brainstorming is terrible for detailed execution. The same mental state that's ideal for learning new information is ineffective for making critical decisions under pressure. Most people never learn to match their mental state to their current task. They try to be creative when they're in analytical mode, attempt detailed work when they're in big picture mode, or make important decisions when they're in reactive mode. This mismatch between mental state and task requirements is why so many people struggle to perform at their potential despite having the necessary skills and knowledge. Elite performers have mastered what I call state management. They know how to deliberately shift their mental state to match whatever they need to accomplish. They can move from calm and reflective to intense and focused within minutes. They can shift from analytical and precise to creative and expansive based on what the situation requires. This ability comes from understanding the specific triggers that create different mental states. Certain breathing patterns activate your parasympathetic nervous system and create calm focus. Certain types of music stimulate your brain's reward centers and increase motivation. Certain physical postures send signals to your brain that increase confidence and reduce anxiety. The key is developing a personalized toolkit of state-changing techniques that work reliably for you. This might include specific visualization exercises that generate confidence, particular breathing patterns that create calm focus, certain types of physical movement that increase energy, or specific mental routines that activate peak performance states. But state management is just one component of elite performance. You also need to understand the rhythm of peak capacity. Your brain doesn't function at the same level throughout the day. There are natural cycles of high and low mental energy that you can either work with or fight against. Most people fight against their natural rhythms. They try to do their most important work when their brain is in low energy mode. Then wonder why they struggle to produce quality results. They attempt creative work when their mind is naturally suited for analytical tasks. Then get frustrated when inspiration doesn't come. Elite performers map their natural energy cycles and align their most important work with their periods of peak mental capacity. They do their most challenging cognitive work when their brain is naturally sharp, handle routine tasks during their low energy periods, and schedule creative work when their mind is most open to new possibilities. This requires tracking your mental energy levels for several weeks to identify your personal patterns. Most people discover that they have 2-3 periods of peak mental capacity per day, usually lasting 9,120 minutes each. These windows represent your most valuable mental real estate, and protecting them becomes crucial for sustained high performance. But energy management alone isn't enough. Elite performance also requires what researchers call cognitive load optimization. Your brain has limited processing capacity, and every decision, distraction, or mental task consumes some of that capacity. When your cognitive load exceeds your available capacity, your performance degrades rapidly. This is why elite performers are obsessive about eliminating unnecessary decisions and distractions from their high-performance periods. They create systems and routines that reduce the mental energy required for basic tasks, freeing up cognitive capacity for their most important work. They might wear the same type of clothing every day to eliminate wardrobe decisions. They might eat the same breakfast to avoid decision fatigue. They might use detailed checklists for routine tasks to prevent mental errors. These systems seem rigid to outsiders, but they actually create more freedom by preserving mental energy for activities that truly matter. Another crucial component of elite performance is what psychologists call flow state optimization. Flow states are periods of peak performance characterized by effortless concentration, intrinsic motivation, and optimal challenge to skill ratio. In flow states, you perform significantly better while expending less mental energy. Flow states aren't mystical experiences. They're predictable neurological states that occur when specific conditions are met. You need clear goals that provide direction without being overwhelming. You need immediate feedback that allows you to adjust your performance in real time. You need a challenge level that's difficult enough to be engaging, but not so difficult that it creates anxiety. Most importantly, You need to eliminate distractions that prevent deep immersion in your task. This means creating an environment that supports sustained attention and removing anything that might pull your focus away from your primary objective. Elite performers also understand the importance of recovery and regeneration. Peak performance isn't sustainable. 247 Your brain needs periods of rest and restoration to maintain high functioning over time. This includes quality sleep, regular breaks, physical exercise, and activities that allow your mind to wander and make new connections. The mistake most people make is thinking that more effort always leads to better results. But there's a point of diminishing returns where additional effort actually decreases performance. Elite performers know how to find the optimal balance between intensity and recovery that maximizes their long-term capacity. They also understand the power of visualization and mental rehearsal before important performances. They spend time mentally practicing their desired outcomes. This isn't wishful thinking. It's actual performance preparation that primes their neural pathways for success. When you visualize performing successfully, your brain activates the same neural circuits it would use during actual performance. This creates what researchers call embodied cognition. Your brain prepares to execute the behaviors you've mentally rehearsed. The cumulative effect of these strategies is what I call sustainable peak performance. Instead of occasionally operating at high levels and then burning out, you learn to consistently access your best capabilities while maintaining your capacity over time. This level of performance becomes your new baseline rather than an occasional peak. You don't have to hope for good days or wait for inspiration to strike. You create the conditions for exceptional performance systematically and repeatedly. The techniques are learnable, but they require consistent practice and refinement. Elite performance isn't a destination you reach once. It's a continuous process of optimizing your mental, physical, and environmental conditions for sustained excellence. Most people never reach their true performance potential because they leave it to chance rather than developing it systematically. But once you understand the principles and commit to implementing them consistently, you gain access to levels of capability that most people never imagined possible. Chapter 13. The Reality Reconstruction System. Rewriting your life story. Your life is not happening to you. It's being created by the story you tell yourself about who you are, what's possible for you, and what your experiences mean. This story feels like objective reality. But it's actually a subjective interpretation that you've been unconsciously constructing and reinforcing for years. The problem is that most people are living out stories that were written when they were too young to question them. These stories were shaped by their family dynamics, early experiences, cultural conditioning, and random events that happened to occur during their formative years. Now, as adults, they are still operating from these outdated narratives that no longer serve their highest potential. But here's what changes everything. You have the power to rewrite your story. You can examine the narratives that have been unconsciously directing your life. Identify which ones are limiting your potential and deliberately construct new stories that align with who you want to become. This isn't about positive thinking or self-deception. This is about recognizing that all stories are constructions, including the one you currently believe about yourself. And if you're going to live in a story anyway, it might as well be one that empowers you rather than limits you. The first step in story reconstruction is becoming aware of your current narrative. Most people are completely unconscious of the stories they're living in. These stories operate like invisible software, shaping their perceptions and behaviors without their awareness. Your current story might sound like, "I'm someone who struggles with money because that's just how my family has always been." Or, "I'm not the type of person who takes big risks because I've been hurt too many times before." Or, "Success is for other people because I don't have the advantages they have." These stories feel true because you've been collecting evidence to support them for years. Your brain's reticular activating system has been filtering reality to show you examples that confirm your existing narrative while ignoring evidence that contradicts it. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle where your story becomes your reality, which reinforces your story, which shapes your reality. But stories are not facts. They're interpretations. And interpretations can be changed. The same experiences that led to one story can be reinterpreted to support a completely different narrative. The rejection that created a story about not being good enough can be reframed as preparation for developing resilience. The failure that created a story about not being capable can be reinterpreted as valuable learning that increased your expertise. Rewriting your story begins with what I call narrative archaeology. You examine your life experiences to understand how your current story was constructed. You identify the key events that shaped your self-concept and the meanings you assign to those events. You recognize that the meanings were choices, not inevitable conclusions. This process often reveals that your limiting stories are based on very limited data. A few negative experiences or critical comments became the foundation for sweeping conclusions about your capabilities and potential. You took isolated incidents and turned them into universal truths about who you are. Once you see how your current story was constructed, you can begin deconstructing it. You can challenge the assumptions that underlie your limitations. You can question whether your past really predicts your future. You can examine whether the meanings you assign to your experiences are the only possible interpretations. The next step is constructing a new narrative that serves your growth rather than limiting it. This isn't about creating a fantasy story that ignores reality. It's about creating an empowering interpretation of your life that focuses on your potential rather than your limitations. Your new story might sound like, I'm someone who has learned valuable lessons about money through challenging experiences, and now I'm ready to apply that wisdom to create financial abundance. Or I'm someone who has developed emotional strength through difficult relationships and now I'm prepared for a truly fulfilling partnership. Or I'm someone who has unique perspectives and experiences that allow me to create value in ways that others can't. The key is making your new story believable to your subconscious mind. If the gap between your current story and your new story is too large, your subconscious will reject the new narrative as unrealistic. But if you can find legitimate ways to reinterpret your experiences that support a more empowering story, your subconscious will begin to accept and support the new narrative. This process requires what psychologists call benefit finding, looking for the ways that difficult experiences contributed to your strength, wisdom, or resilience. This doesn't mean being grateful for trauma or pretending that negative experiences were positive. It means recognizing how you've grown through challenges and incorporating that growth into your identity. Your new story also needs to be future-focused rather than past-focused. Instead of being defined by what happened to you, you become defined by what you're becoming. Instead of being limited by your history, you're inspired by your potential. Instead of being a victim of circumstances, you're the author of your future. But creating a new story isn't enough. You have to begin living it. This means making decisions based on your new narrative rather than your old one. When faced with opportunities, you ask, what would someone with my new story do? When encountering challenges, you respond from your new identity rather than your old patterns. Every action you take based on your new story provides evidence that supports that story. Every time you act like the person you're becoming rather than the person you used to be, you're reinforcing new neural pathways and weakening old ones. Over time, your new story becomes more real than your old story because you have more recent evidence to support it. The most powerful story reconstruction technique is called future self-visualization. You create a detailed vision of who you'll be when you fully embodied your new story. You imagine how that person thinks, feels, acts, and responds to various situations. You visualize their daily routines, their relationships, their work, and their overall approach to life. This vision becomes your North Star, guiding your decisions and actions. When you're unclear about what to do in a situation, you imagine how your future self would handle it. When you're tempted to fall back into old patterns, you remember who you're becoming and choose behavior that aligns with that identity. The goal is to reach what I call narrative coherence. The point where your new story feels more authentic and compelling than your old story. This happens when you've accumulated enough evidence through your actions and experiences that your new narrative becomes your default way of seeing yourself and your potential. At this point, Transformation becomes natural rather than forced. You're not trying to change yourself because change flows naturally from your new identity. You're not fighting against your nature because your nature has evolved to support your growth. Reality reconstruction is one of the most powerful tools for personal transformation because it addresses change at the identity level rather than just the behavioral level. When you change your story, you change your reality. When you change your reality, you change your life. The stories that have been limiting you are not permanent fixtures of your personality. They're learned patterns that can be unlearned and replaced with narratives that support your highest potential. The only question is whether you're willing to take responsibility for authoring a story worthy of the person you're capable of becoming. Chapter 14. The Mastery Mindset. Programming yourself for continuous evolution. There are two types of people in this world. Those who believe their abilities are fixed and those who believe their abilities can be developed. This distinction, first identified by psychologist Carol Dweck, is one of the most important factors determining whether someone reaches their potential or stays trapped in mediocrity. People with fixed mindsets believe that intelligence, talent, and abilities are static traits that you either have or don't have. They avoid challenges because failure might reveal their limitations. They give up quickly when things get difficult because struggle feels like evidence of inadequacy. They see effort as a sign of weakness rather than a path to mastery. People with growth mindsets believe that abilities can be developed through dedication, hard work, and learning from failure. They embrace challenges because obstacles are opportunities to improve. They persist through difficulties because struggle is expected part of the development process. They see effort as the path to mastery rather than evidence of inadequacy. This mindset difference creates dramatically different life trajectories. Fixed mindset people plateau early and stay there because they're afraid of the discomfort that comes with growth. Growth mindset people continue evolving throughout their lives because they interpret challenges as opportunities rather than threats. But developing a true mastery mindset goes beyond just believing that improvement is possible. It requires fundamentally restructuring your relationship with learning, failure, feedback, and the development process itself. It means becoming someone who thrives on challenge rather than someone who merely tolerates it. The foundation of mastery mindset is what I call processor orientation. Most people are outcome-oriented. They focus on results, achievements, and external recognition. While outcomes matter, focusing primarily on results creates anxiety, impatience, and the tendency to quit when progress feels slow. Process-oriented people focus on the quality of their efforts rather than the speed of their results. They understand that mastery is developed through consistent practice over time, not through dramatic breakthroughs or sudden insights. They measure success through improvement rather than achievement, through learning rather than knowing, through progress rather than perfection. This shift in focus is liberating because it puts success within your control. You can't always control outcomes, but you can always control the quality of your process. You can't determine when breakthroughs will happen, but you can ensure that you're consistently putting in the work that makes breakthroughs possible. Processor orientation also requires developing what researchers call deliberate practice. This isn't just regular practice or going through the motions. Deliberate practice involves focusing specifically on your weaknesses, seeking immediate feedback, and operating at the edge of your current capabilities. Most people avoid deliberate practice because it's uncomfortable. It requires you to constantly work on things you're not good at yet. It forces you to confront your limitations rather than hiding in your areas of existing strength. It demands that you embrace the discomfort of not knowing rather than the comfort of repeating what you already know. But this discomfort is where mastery is forged. Every time you practice something difficult, you're literally rewiring your brain to handle more complexity. Every time you struggle with a challenge and push through, you're expanding your capacity for future challenges. Every time you confront a weakness and work to improve it, you're becoming more complete as a performer. Mastery mindset also requires redefining your relationship with failure. In a fixed mindset, failure represents evidence of inadequacy. In a mastery mindset, failure represents valuable information about what needs to be improved. The goal isn't to avoid failure. The goal is to fail faster and learn faster so you can improve faster. This means seeking out situations where failure is likely because those are the situations where learning is maximized. It means viewing setbacks as feedback rather than verdicts. It means extracting lessons from every experience, especially the painful ones. Because pain often signals the most important learning opportunities. The most successful people in every field share this relationship with failure. They fail more often than average performers because they attempt more difficult challenges. But they also learn more from their failures because they've trained themselves to extract maximum value from every setback. Another crucial component of mastery mindset is what I call beginner's mind. This is the ability to approach familiar situations with fresh eyes and curiosity rather than assuming you already know everything there is to know. Beginner's mind prevents you from becoming stagnant in your learning and keeps you open to new insights and improvements even when you become highly skilled in an area. Maintaining beginner's mind allows you to continue discovering new layers of depth and sophistication. The moment you think you've mastered something completely, you stop growing in that area. The moment you approach something with genuine curiosity, new possibilities for improvement become visible. This requires intellectual humility, the recognition that there's always more to learn, regardless of your current level of expertise. The most masterful performers are often the most curious about their field because they understand that mastery is an ongoing process rather than a destination you reach once. Mastery mindset also involves developing what researchers call intrinsic motivation. This means finding satisfaction in the process of improvement itself rather than depending on external rewards for motivation. While external recognition is nice, it's unreliable and outside your control. Intrinsic motivation is sustainable because it comes from within. People with strong intrinsic motivation love the process of getting better at things. They enjoy the puzzles aspect of overcoming challenges. They find satisfaction in the gradual development of their capabilities. This internal motivation allows them to persist through periods when external rewards are scarce and progress feels slow. Building intrinsic motivation requires connecting your development efforts to your deeper values and sense of purpose. When you understand why mastery matters to you personally, the effort required to achieve it feels meaningful rather than burdensome. When improvement aligns with your identity and values, motivation comes naturally rather than needing to be manufactured. The ultimate expression of mastery mindset is what I call continuous evolution. This means viewing yourself as a work in progress rather than a finished product. It means staying curious about your potential rather than settling for your current capabilities. It means embracing change rather than resisting it. Continuous evolution requires comfort with uncertainty because growth always involves moving into unknown territory. It requires patience with the development process because meaningful improvement takes time. It requires persistence through plateaus because progress isn't always linear. But the rewards of mastery mindset extend far beyond skill development. When you approach life with genuine curiosity, ongoing challenges, and commitment to growth, life becomes infinitely more interesting and fulfilling. You stop being bored because there's always something new to discover. You stop being intimidated by challenges because you see them as opportunities to become more capable. Most importantly, mastery mindset gives you control over your future. When you know you can develop any capability you need, you're not limited by your current skills or knowledge. When you trust in your ability to learn and adapt, you can pursue opportunities that others avoid because they seem too difficult or unfamiliar. The choice between fixed and growth mindset is one of the most important decisions you'll ever make. It determines whether you spend your life protecting your current identity or expanding it. Whether you avoid challenges or embrace them, whether you see obstacles as threats or opportunities. Mastery mindset isn't just a way of thinking about skill development. It's a way of approaching life that creates unlimited potential for growth, fulfillment, and impact. And like every other aspect of mental programming, it's a choice you can make and reinforce through conscious practice until it becomes your natural way of being. Chapter 15. The Unstoppable Identity. Becoming the person who never quits. Everything we've discussed in this program comes down to one fundamental question. Who are you becoming? Not who you are, not who you've been, but who you are in the process of becoming. Because the person you're becoming will determine the life you create, the challenges you overcome, and the impact you make in this world. Most people drift through life without ever consciously choosing who they want to become. They let circumstances, other people's expectations, and random events shape their identity. They react to life rather than creating it. They become victims of their programming rather than architects of their potential. But you have a choice. You can continue letting external forces determine your identity, or you can take conscious control of who you're becoming. You can continue being defined by your past, or you can start being defined by your potential. You can continue operating from limiting beliefs about what's possible for you. Or you can reprogram your mind for unlimited growth. The most powerful identity you can develop is what I call the unstoppable identity. This isn't about becoming arrogant or thinking you're better than others. This is about becoming someone who never gives up on themselves, never accepts limitation as permanent, and never stops growing regardless of circumstances. Unstoppable people aren't people who never face obstacles. They're people who have developed such strong internal resolve that external obstacles become irrelevant to their long-term trajectory. They might get knocked down, but they always get back up. They might face setbacks, but they never interpret setbacks as evidence that they should quit. This identity is built on several core beliefs that become so deeply embedded in your subconscious that they operate automatically. The first is the belief that you are capable of learning and developing any skill you need to succeed. This doesn't mean you think you can become world-class at everything overnight. It means you have complete confidence in your ability to improve at anything you commit to developing. This belief eliminates the fear of inadequacy that stops most people from pursuing their biggest goals. When you know you can learn whatever you need to learn, current skill gaps become temporary inconveniences rather than permanent limitations. When you trust your ability to develop, you can pursue opportunities based on interest and potential rather than current capability. The second core belief is that failure is temporary and instructive rather than permanent and defining. Unstoppable people don't experience less failure than others. They just interpret failure completely differently. Where others see evidence of inadequacy, they see valuable feedback. Where others see reasons to quit, they see information about how to improve. This belief allows them to take risks that others avoid because they're not afraid of the learning process that comes with failure. They understand that every expert in every field failed repeatedly while developing their expertise. They see failure as a prerequisite for mastery rather than evidence of unsuitability. The third core belief is that persistence and consistency are more important than talent or circumstances. Unstoppable people don't wait for perfect conditions or exceptional ability. They know that showing up consistently over time creates more extraordinary results than sporadic brilliance ever could. This belief liberates them from the need to be exceptional from the beginning. They can start where they are with what they have, knowing that consistent effort will compound into exceptional results over time. They don't compare their beginning to someone else's middle or end. The fourth core belief is that they are responsible for their results regardless of external circumstances. This isn't about ignoring the reality of privilege, luck, or systemic advantages. It's about focusing on what they can control rather than being paralyzed by what they can't control. This belief gives them enormous personal power because it means their results depend on their choices rather than their circumstances. They can't control everything that happens to them, but they can control how they respond to everything that happens to them. And their responses ultimately determine their outcomes more than their circumstances do. Building an unstoppable identity requires more than just adopting these beliefs intellectually. You have to embody them through your actions until they become part of who you are rather than just ideas you think about. This happens through what I call identity-confirming actions. Small daily behaviors that prove to your subconscious mind that you really are becoming this new person. If you want to become unstoppable, you have to act unstoppable before you feel unstoppable. This means following through on commitments to yourself even when you don't feel like it. It means getting back up after setbacks, even when you feel discouraged. It means taking action despite uncertainty, even when you crave security. Every time you act consistent with your unstoppable identity, you're casting a vote for who you're becoming. Every time you quit when things get difficult, you're casting a vote for who you used to be. Your identity is literally shaped by the votes you cast through your actions every single day. The transformation process isn't always comfortable. There will be moments when your old identity feels safer and more familiar than your new one. There will be times when going back to your old patterns seems easier than continuing to grow. This is normal and expected. The key is to keep acting like the person you're becoming even when you don't feel like that person yet. Over time, something magical happens. The actions that once required discipline become automatic. The beliefs that once required conscious reinforcement become your natural way of thinking. The identity that once felt foreign becomes who you actually are. When this transformation is complete, you don't have to try to be unstoppable. You simply are unstoppable. Persistence becomes your default response to obstacles. Learning becomes your automatic reaction to failure. Growth becomes your natural response to challenges. This isn't the end of your development. It's the beginning of unlimited development. When you truly embody an unstoppable identity, you can apply this mindset to any area of your life. You can develop any skill, overcome any obstacle, and create any result you're willing to commit to achieving. The techniques and strategies we've covered in this program are powerful, but they're just tools. The real transformation happens when you decide who you want to become and then align every thought, action, and decision with that identity. Your brain has been rewiring itself throughout this entire program. Every concept you've understood, every technique you've learned, and every insight you've gained has been creating new neural pathways in your mind. But the real change will happen when you leave this program and begin applying what you've learned in your daily life. The question isn't whether you can reprogram your brain and become unstoppable. The science proves that's possible for anyone willing to do the work. The question is whether you will do the work, whether you'll take these tools and actually use them, whether you'll take these insights and actually apply them. Your unstoppable identity is waiting for you. It's not something you have to create from nothing. It's something you have to uncover by removing the layers of limiting programming that have been covering it. Every person who has ever achieved something extraordinary had to access this same unstoppable part of themselves. The only difference between people who live extraordinary lives and people who settle for ordinary lives is that extraordinary people decided to become unstoppable and then took action to make that decision a reality. They didn't wait for permission, perfect conditions, or complete certainty. They started where they were and became who they needed to become through the process of consistent action. That same opportunity is available to you right now. Your past doesn't determine your future. Your current circumstances don't define your potential. Your limiting beliefs don't have to become your permanent reality. You have everything you need to reprogram your brain and become unstoppable. The techniques exist. The science is proven. The only question remaining is what are you going to do with this information? Because information without implementation is just entertainment. Knowledge without action is just potential. Understanding without application is just wishful thinking. Your unstoppable life is waiting for you to claim it. The time is now. The choice is yours. And the power has been within you all along. Thanks for watching. For more updates, like, share and subscribe the channel.